All right, we're going to back up as far as the United Kingdom for the purposes of our review tonight, and then we are going to, and then we'll take a quick look at and review some of the New Testament material, but we're not going to be adding a lot new there. Let's talk about the United Kingdom. We're talking about that first Bible time frame after the Judges. Israel said, "Give us a king." And despite the fact that that is not what God really wanted for them, he told Samuel, "Give them a king." They want to be like the nations around them. You warned them what that's going to look like, but you appoint for them a king. And so that is the United Kingdom. Before we talk about specifics, let's review what are the overall Bible text, the scripture limits of this Bible time period. Okay, either I was really unclear about the question, everybody has their microphone on mute, something.
1 Samuel chapter 10 through I don't remember. 1 Kings 11.
There you go. Yeah. Okay. 1 Samuel 10 through 1 Kings 11, and then the parallel in 1 Chronicles 10 through 2 Chronicles 9. Again, I'll just remind you of kind of my little memory device for that. It may be helpful to you. It may not be. But 1 Samuel begins in 10, ends at 1 Kings, ends in 11. Then we go back to 10, and then we go backwards to 9. So, 10, 11, 10, 9. Again, I don't know if that's helpful for anybody at all besides me, but that's how I try to remember that. When we talk about the United Kingdom, we divide that into 3 sections. And what are those 3 main sections of this Bible time period?
Saul, David, and Solomon.
All right, Saul, David, and Solomon, the 3 kings of the United Kingdom, the only 3 kings of the United Kingdom. All right, let's talk about the scripture limits for each of those kings. What's the simple kind of quick and dirty way to remember this?
First Samuel is Saul. 2 Samuel is David. 1 Kings is Solomon.
There you go. So Saul is 1 Samuel, David is 2 Samuel, and Solomon is 1 Kings. And then there are also the Chronicles accounts. Now remember that 1 Chronicles chapter 10 just refers to the death of Saul. We don't have any details about his reign in 1 Chronicles. And so you might say that 1 Chronicles is David and 2 Chronicles is Solomon. That would be another again, quick and dirty, kind of easy way to remember that. I include this 1 Chronicles 10 reference just because it references the death of Saul. But if you don't remember that, that's not absolutely necessary. In fact, that's a very, very minor point in the grand scheme of things. So 1 Samuel, 2 Samuel, 1 Kings, 1 Chronicles, 2 Chronicles. If you don't remember the specific chapter numbers, that's okay. That's not the most important thing. If you can remember that breakdown, that gets you a long way down the road. All right, let's talk about the divided kingdom. If the United Kingdom and the reign of Solomon ends with 1 Kings chapter 11, I bet you can tell me where the period of the divided kingdom begins.
12.
Good. 1
12.
Kings chapter 12. Anybody remember where it ends? I'll give you a hint. It's in 2 Kings.
The end.
No, not quite, because you've still got something else with that comes in 2 Kings, another Bible time period, which is what?
Judah alone.
That's right. So you still got to get Judah alone in there. So it doesn't go all the way to the end of 2 Kings. It goes to 2 Kings chapter 17. And then 2 Chronicles, again, picking up with chapter 10 where we left off previously and going through 2 Chronicles chapter 29. So again, there, not the end of 2 Chronicles. I have absolutely no memory device tricks to help you remember those chapter numbers. There's just nothing there. But if you can remember where that begins, picking up where the United Kingdom ends, where the divided kingdom begins, where the United Kingdom ends, that gets you started down the right path. So we're not going to assign any specific chapter numbers, but in the main bullet points, describe the period of the divided kingdom for me.
The kingdom of Israel in the north and kingdom of Judah in the south.
Okay. And about how long does this period last?
200 years.
About 200 years until what happened? What brings this Bible time period to an end?
Israel is carried off into captivity by the Assyrians.
That's right. When the northern kingdom is carried off into captivity. Tell me the minor prophets of the divided kingdom.
Right?
Without looking at your notes, somebody just give me one.
Obadiah.
Jonah.
Hosea.
Micah.
Amos.
Nahum.
Say that again.
Nahum.
Not yet.
Amos. Isaiah.
Oh, that's a
And
major.
Micah.
Minor. We got one more minor.
Jonah.
We already said Jonah.
Habakkuk.
Nope.
Right.
Joel. It's the first 6 of the minor prophets. Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah. It's the first 6 of the minor prophets. And when I say the first 6, I mean the first 6 as they are in our Bible. All right. So the first half of the minor prophets go with the divided kingdom. And then we mentioned Isaiah as a major prophet, but he begins in the period of the divided kingdom and continues into the time of Judah alone. All right. So let's talk about the period of Judah alone. Again, I don't have any memory tricks for you on this. It is the balance of 2 Kings and the balance of 2 Chronicles. So 2 Kings 18 through 25, 2 Chronicles 29 to 36. When we talk about the period of Judah alone, Israel's been carried away into captivity by the Assyrians. This is the time of Judah alone. There are 3 kings in particular that we highlight of the period of Judah alone. They're not the only kings of this time period, but that we highlight them, and their stories are some of the most memorable and some of the most noteworthy of the time of Judah alone. What are those 3 kings? Somebody give me one of them, and try not to look at your notes. Hezekiah is one of them. Manasseh. Josiah. That's right. And so you kind of have you kind of have the good and the bad here. And in some ways, these 3 kind of provide a snapshot into the history of this period. You have Hezekiah, who overall was a really good king. He had his failings, but he was remembered as a good king. You have his son Manasseh, who essentially undoes or attempts to undo everything Hezekiah did. And then you have Josiah, the great reformer. And so that tried to right the ship. But then ultimately you have the decline of Judah. let's talk about the prophets of Judah alone. Isaiah continues from the divided kingdom into the time of Judah alone. What other major prophet goes with Judah alone?
Jeremiah.
Jeremiah.
Habakkuk.
And that obviously Jeremiah. That includes Jeremiah, and his book Lamentations goes with that. And then what about the minor prophets of Judah alone?
Zephaniah.
Zephaniah. There's two more.
Habakkuk.
Habakkuk.
Nahum.
I didn't hear.
Nahum.
Nahum. So the first 6 of the 12 minor prophets go with the divided kingdom. The second 6 are divided 3 and 3. 3 go with Judah alone, and the other 3 go with what?
Captivity.
Yeah.
Nope. Return from captivity. So it's a little bit of a trick. Sorry. Yeah, you would think, oh, next Bible time period. Nope. Kind of throw you a curveball. But Jeremiah, and again, in the order that they appear in the Bible. The Bible order is not necessarily chronological, but they are grouped together. So the first 6 is the divided kingdom, and then the next 6 are divided 3 and 3. 3 in Judah alone, and then the final 3 will be in the period of the return. When we talk about the captivity, we'll use the same historical text references in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles as the period of Judah alone, because there's just overlap there. It's not like a clear demarcation, a clear line, because the captivity actually takes place in stages. What 2 major prophets do we attach to the captivity?
Daniel.
Daniel
Ezekiel.
and Ezekiel. That's right. Daniel and Ezekiel we attach to the captivity. And they are clearly prophets, but they are also historical accounts. They give us history of the captivity as well. We'll talk about the return from captivity. What books of the Bible do we associate with the return from captivity? We've already said that there are 3 minor prophets. What are the last 3 minor prophets?
Micah. Or Malachi.
Okay, yeah. Malachi is the last one. All right, so there's 1. 2 more.
Zechariah.
Zechariah, and back up 1 more.
No, we already said that one.
Haggai.
Haggai. The last 3 minor prophets go with the return. All right, what 3 historical books go with the return from captivity?
Ezra.
Ezra
Nehemiah.
Esther.
and Esther. That's exactly right. And so in the order that they work chronologically, it's Ezra, Haggai, Zechariah, Esther, Nehemiah, Malachi. All right, that I put them on the screen in the order that they are chronologically. So I'm giving you a hint, as giving you kind of a preview of putting some chapters together. All right, so let's talk about what goes into this time period. Who led the first return of captives back to Jerusalem?
Zerubbabel.
And
Jeshua.
Jeshua. That's right. So Zerubbabel was the governor, Jeshua the high priest, and I gave you the answer already. Their focus was on the reconstruction of the temple. All right. All right. Now, there is another story that fits in at this point before we talk about the second return. What story is that?
Esther.
Esther. All right, very good. Then the second return of captives is led by who?
Nehemiah.
Nehemiah.
Not yet.
Or Ezra.
Ezra. That's right. Ezra is the second. And what was the focus of Ezra's return?
Purifying the worship.
Purifying the worship. That's exactly right. All right. And then we get to the final return of captives led by
Nehemiah.
Nehemiah. And what was his focus?
The wall.
The walls of Jerusalem. All right, very good. All right, so let's fill in some details. All right, let's fill in some details. Why is this? Here we go. All right, so if I want to read about Zerubbabel and Jeshua and the return that they led, where do I go?
Ezra.
All right, the book of Ezra, and specifically the first 6 chapters of Ezra. But there is some other source material that goes with a discussion of the rebuilding of the temple. What else goes with this first bullet point?
Hey, guy.
Haggai and
Zechariah.
All right. So remember that Zerubbabel and Jeshua led the captives, led the return for the purpose of rebuilding the wall. They got in the face of opposition, got discouraged about that. They quit rebuilding the temple. I said the wall, didn't I? The temple, and it sat there unfinished for 16 years. God sent the prophets Haggai and Zechariah to stir up the people to get the temple finished. And so Ezra 1 through 6, Haggai and Zechariah go together. As is already on your screen, the story of Esther fits between Ezra chapter 6 and 7. So now let's talk about the return led by Ezra. If I want to read about the return led by Ezra and his work of purifying the worship of the Jews, where do I go? Okay, I thought this one was easy. It's the rest of the book of Ezra. Okay, good. Okay, you all had me sweating for a moment. All right, the rest of the book of Ezra is the story of Ezra. Okay, good. All right. Now, if I want to read about the story of Nehemiah's return and the reconstruction of the walls, we go to the book of Nehemiah. Good. Okay. Nehemiah. And that's where then we fit in the last prophet of the Old Testament, Malachi. All right. Now, there are no scripture references for the years of silence, unless, of course, you want to highlight the prophecy of the years of silence, which Diana was able to remind us of last week. Anybody besides Diana remember where that is?
Amos chapter 4.
You got Amos right, not chapter 4. I hear this sort of low rumbling, but I'm not discerning an answer. So y'all speak.
Chapter 3.
Now you're just throwing darts at a board, Greg.
8 was my next guess.
Okay, all right. Well, all right. Congratulations. 8 is correct. Anybody want to take a stab at the verse number?
30.
No, there aren't 30 verses in chapter. It is verse 11. Greg is making this painful on me. So I did something that I said I should have done. I don't know if you can see that. I in red pen, I highlighted that verse in my Bible. So hopefully I will remember that and not embarrass myself in a future study. This is no guarantee, but maybe. So I did what I said I should have done a long time ago. So Amos chapter 8 and verse 11, God prophesied a famine of the word. All right, let's talk about the New Testament. We are not going to get into a lot of detail about this tonight. The first Bible time period of the New Testament is the life of Christ. If I want to read about the life of Christ, where do I go?
The Gospels.
The Gospels, which are what? What are the Gospel accounts? Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All right. So the life of Christ, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. All right. I'm not going to review all of the. I'm not going to go through all of the bullet points of this Bible
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John.
before, but you remember this this very simple outline of the life of Christ and the approximate time frames associated with that. All right, let's talk about the next Bible time period, which is what?
The early church.
All right, the early church. Good. If I'm going to read about the early church, where am I going in my Bible?
The book of
All right, the book of Acts. All right. About how many years are covered in the book of Acts?
30.
About 30 years. Good. All right. Now, if I'm going to divide the book of Acts into two sections, where am I going to draw the dividing line? If you don't remember the chapter number, that's okay. Can you tell me
I do.
we're going to divide by what significant person or by what significant events? Can you tell me that?
Well, we usually divide it with the work of Peter and that of Paul.
All right, good.
So what's that take us? Peter takes us through about chapter 12 or so, and then Paul.
Yeah, that's
From
exactly
that point
right.
on.
So Acts 1 through 12 is primarily Peter is the main character. It is primarily the work in Jerusalem, Palestine, and the eastern end of the Mediterranean region, and covers about the first 15 years of the book of Acts. And so beginning with Acts chapter 13 and going through the end of the book of Acts, we're dealing primarily with the work of the Apostle Paul. His first preaching journey begins in Acts chapter 13, and that's why that dividing mark is there. And so that's how we outline the book of Acts. It's not nice and neat, half and half. Sorry to disappoint you fellow OCD people like me, but that's the mark, okay? And so primarily the work of Peter, or at least he's the main character. Chapters 1 through 12, Paul, chapters 13 through 28. And with Paul, the spread of the gospel into all of the Roman Empire. So if you look at, let's see, do I have I don't have a New Testament map here handy, but this will work. This is the Roman Empire. So this will work for this purpose. So when we say primarily the eastern end of the Mediterranean, here's Jerusalem. This is Palestine. This is Judea, Samaria. This is and then on up into Syria. This is the eastern. Here's the Mediterranean Sea. For those of you who are directionally challenged like me, this is the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea. But when we start talking about the Apostle Paul's work, he launches from Antioch of Syria, which is up here, but then you've got Phrygia, Galatia, Pamphylia. Here's Ephesus. This is the province of Asia Minor. He crosses the Aegean Sea up here to Philippi. Nearby, you also have Thessalonica. This is the region of Macedonia. This is the region of Achaia. On the isthmus right here, you have Corinth. Here's Athens. Ultimately, to the city of Rome. And so spreading ultimately the gospel to all of the Roman Empire, which is highlighted in pink on this map. And so that just gives you a geographic picture of what we've talked about in words. All right. Now, that brings us then to the very last Bible time period, which is what?
Letters to Christians.
Letters to Christians. All right. And when we talk about letters to Christians, what are we talking about? What books are we talking about?
Romans to Revelations.
All right. Romans to Revelation. We include all of the epistles and Revelation because even though Revelation is a book of prophecy, it was written to Christians. Some of the epistles are addressed to individuals, some of them to a specific local church, some of them to multiple local churches or the Christians in a particular region, rather than just one single location. But all of these are written to Christians. 6 of these are written during the time of the book of Acts. Can anybody remember those without looking at your notes? What epistles fit into the chronology of the book of Acts?
1st and 2nd Thessalonians.
1st and 2nd Thessalonians,
Romans.
Romans,
1st and 2nd Corinthians.
1st and 2nd Corinthians, one more.
Galatians.
Galatians. Very good. All right. So 1st and 2nd Thessalonians are the earliest that fit into the chronology of Acts. It's possible that James is as early or earlier, but the date of James is much less certain. And so it's possible that James would be included in this list as well, but it's not as certain. 1st and 2nd Thessalonians, Paul wrote from Corinth around 51 or 52. The book of Galatians, I've mentioned before that the timing of Galatians is uncertain. There are a couple of theories about that, but it likely fits here in the early to mid 50s. 1st and 2nd Corinthians from Ephesus and Macedonia, respectively, about 55. And then Romans from the city of Corinth about the year 57. All right. I have more than 3.5 minutes left, and I'm done. And we have gotten through this study. I appreciate your patience with me. This is by far the farthest I have ever carried this study. We've gone further with it and in more detail than any time I've ever taught this material. And you all have been incredibly patient with me as a teacher and the time that we've spent. And I hope it's been helpful for you. I will, I have set myself a reminder to finish the quick reference material this week. So hopefully I can give that to you next Sunday. Try to consolidate this into 4-point font or something like that. So it is impossible to read, but at least it's all in one place. But I'll get it to you. You're responsible for your own reading glasses and magnifiers. But I'll work on that for you. All right. Anybody have any questions, comments, observations, complaints, or criticisms tonight?